Movie fires thrill people. Real fires kill people. A message from the International Association of Firefighters.
The difference is you. Call the Volunteer Connection today.
We are going to lift this nation out of hard times inch by inch and day by day, and those who would stop us had better step aside, because I look at hard times and I make this vow. This will not stand. Pass it by March 20th. We will act.
Time for national health insurance.
I have acknowledged wrongdoing.
We're unequivocally committed to peace.
Our economy has been sluggish.
This is a murder.
From NBC News, this is Sunday Today with Garrick Utley, Mary Alice Williams, and Al Roker.
Good morning. The top of the Sunday morning to all of you. We've all gathered for an hour and a half get-together. Al Roker's outside covering a major story. We'll get to that in just a moment. The other major story, the top of the news actually this morning, concerns the U.S. military has started the forced repatriation of Haitian refugees. Some of those thousands at the Guantanamo Bay base in Cuba. They are going back to Haiti. That started overnight. We'll have that and more in just a moment.
And on this February 2nd, even the groundhogs are wearing woolies. Can spring be far behind? We're checking in with Al Roker up on the roof.
Well, Mary Alice, we have a breaking story here. Our groundhog, Sunday Today Sam, has gotten loose, and he's trying to get loose here up on Rockefeller Center. Walt Landowski from the Staten Island Zoo has him. I think we got him. He was so excited that he saw his shadow. He took off. But we'll be back a little bit later. Walt is going to help us with Sunday Today Sam to get a little update as far as Punxsutawney Phil's forecast. Is he okay, Walt?
He's okay.
All right. We'll be back a little bit later.
Thank heaven. This morning we'll be talking about the State of the Union and about politics. With the White House up for grabs this election year, you can't have one without the other. The President's State of the Union was delivered to Congress, but his real audience was the American voter, deeply worried about the sorry state of the economy. Did that one presidential speech convince enough of them that he has a plan to get the country moving again, to get people back to work? That's our cover story this morning, the State of the Union, politics, and what happens next.
And inside the cover of Sunday Today, on the other pages, we'll learn about a group of lawyers using the courts in this country to spread religion and religious practice. We'll meet a woman whose childhood fantasies led her to take others on a magical trip to the land of make-believe. And you'll meet again a young girl and a team of surgeons who changed her looks and her life.
She opened her eyes really wide, and then she touched her face. And then she looked at me and she said, "I want you to buy me a new face."
I think we should get to pray anywhere. I mean, whether it's outside or inside school, as long as it's, you know, I mean, it's all voluntary. If you want to do it, you can do it.
And I used to be sent to the basement. And it'd be really dark down there. And I used to sit there by the furnace. And at first I was scared, but then I all of a sudden saw pictures in the dark.
And this morning we're also going to take an interesting trip, a trip to the former Soviet Republic of Tajikistan, now an independent country. We'll see the rise of Islamic power there. And here in the United States, we'll talk with Democratic presidential candidate Paul Tsongas. But first, Mary Alice has the news this morning.
The American military has started returning refugees to Haiti from the Guantanamo naval base in Cuba. 150 of the refugees were put aboard the Coast Guard cutter Steadfast on Saturday. And Saturday night, the ship began its 14-hour trip to Haiti. The repatriation began after the Supreme Court overturned a judge's order blocking the return. The government claims that the more than 10,000 refugees left the island to escape poverty, not repression, and don't qualify for political asylum. But one refugee said they're scared for their lives. Russian President Boris Yeltsin is back in Moscow this morning after his trip to the United States and Canada. He had complained of a lack of support from certain countries. He didn't say which ones, but Canada isn't one of them. It agreed to a 5-year trade program that includes the sale of 25 tons of grain over 5 years. Before meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Mulroney, President Yeltsin sat down with President Bush at Camp David. It appeared from the statements of both that each got at least some of what he wanted. Jim Miklaszewski is in Washington with the story.
It was all smiles, but for Yeltsin it was serious business. After 3 hours of meetings, Presidents Bush and Yeltsin announced they'd hold a couple of summits this year and signed a declaration that promised a new partnership of trust.
So there is no question that this President Yeltsin is committed to democratic reform.
From now on, we do not consider ourselves to be potential enemies, as it had been previously in our military doctrine.
Yeltsin is a friend in need. He's desperate and will do anything for economic help. He offered bigger cuts in nuclear weapons. Secretary Baker will follow that up in Moscow in 2 weeks. Yeltsin didn't ask for a handout, and Bush didn't offer. But Yeltsin warned that without some help soon, Russia could erupt into chaos. Congressional leaders who met with Yeltsin said some additional aid now would be a small price to pay.
We do.
Yeltsin says the next 3 months are critical to survival, Russia's and his own. But he should not expect to get much more help from his new best friend. Jim Miklaszewski, NBC News at the White House.
And Turkish authorities say at least 350 people are dead or missing after a series of avalanches that buried entire villages in southeast Turkey. The toll is expected to go even higher as more rescue teams reach the area. And that earthquake Saturday in Tokyo injured 30 people, some of them seriously, but there were no fatalities. The quake added to the problems that had been caused by Tokyo's biggest snowstorm in years, a storm that cut power to hundreds of thousands of homes. And that's the news, except for the errant animal news.
Animal news. Weatherman Al Roker knows it all, but sometimes needs just a little bit of help, and Al is outside with, what do we call it, J. Fred Groundhog, Al?
That's right. This is Sunday Today Sam, otherwise known as a little guy from the Staten Island Zoo here in New York. He's about 6 years old, and he is very agile, as Walt Lewandowski, his keeper, will tell you. He bolted a little while ago. He was so excited that he saw his shadow. The legend behind groundhogs seeing their shadow dates all the way back to the Middle Ages. Candlemas Day, February 2nd, is linked with weather lore. Well, a lot of folks out in Europe used to use animals to predict the weather. In France, in fact, they used a bear. Well, in Germany, they used a hedgehog. When Germans migrated to Pennsylvania back in the mid-1700s, well, they used the next best thing, a groundhog, and hence began the sighting of a groundhog. If his shadow showed up, well, that meant 6 more weeks of winter. Punxsutawney Phil said he saw his shadow, and so did Sunday Today Sam. He saw his shadow. That's why he got so, you saw it, didn't you? I'm going to close things up here because I don't want you going on another jog, okay? But in any event, he saw his shadow. We got 6 more weeks of winter, friends. We're up here live on the Sunday Today Gardens. We like to have picnics here and such, but it's not very picnic-like today. Let's take a look at what's going on outside. As we take a look at the satellite picture, you can see big storm off the New England coast. The parts of Nova Scotia and Halifax up to 3 feet of snow. Snow drifts of up to 13 feet. A lot of rain in southern Texas and some wet weather moving into the northwest. Here's what it looks like down on the ground. We will show you that basically, as we shuffle the deck, we've got gale force winds off the northeast coast, a lot of snow and cold in the northeast. Rest of the country is beautiful. With the exception of Texas, there is some rain there, about an inch, but we are looking for record-breaking weather back again into the plains. Some clouds as you work your way into the Rockies. Wet weather in the northwest. Sunshine in the southern California, and it looks like it is going to be gorgeous there. Some rain in throughout parts of Hawaii and some snow in Alaska. Oh, makes sense, right? That's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods. We're expecting a high today, 37 degrees in New York City. It's going to be windy and cold, but it's going to be nice and sunny in Los Angeles with lots of sunshine, 70, 51 in Seattle and rain, sunshine and 50 degrees in Chicago, 72 and sunny in Miami. Well, my friend Punxsutawney Phil has nothing on Sunday Today, Sam, and we'll be back inside where it's warm in just a little bit.
All right, come back in, Al, and thanks to your friend there. Next, we're going to turn to our economy. Is there anything anyone these days can do to get it moving? We're going to look at the president's plan and where we go from here after this.
And I know, and you know, that everything I propose will be viewed by some in merely partisan terms, but I ask you to know what is in my heart, and my aim is to increase our nation's...
At BASF, we don't make the plane, we make it lighter. We don't make the lotion, we make it smoother. We don't make the dress, we make it brighter. We don't make the carpet, we make it tougher. At BASF, we don't make a lot of the products you buy, we make a lot of the products you buy better. BASF, the spirit of innovation.
The Lexus LS400 has an extremely effective electronic security system. While it may look rather simple to you, to a car thief, it looks something like this.
Where do you want to be in 10 years?
Detroit to Minneapolis, Minneapolis to Detroit. That's not why I became a pilot. I'll tell you the run I want. St. Thomas to Saba Island. In my own Grumman Mallard. Call it Dave's Airways. That's what I want for my investments. Now, how do we do it?
You can get there from here with Shearson Lehman Brothers.
Hi, I'm Bob Granger, and I'm here to answer 2 drugstore questions that crop up all the time. Okay, 1, why are pharmacists always up on a platform? I have no idea. You see, medicine shop pharmacists are down here, where you are. Makes for easier conversation. And 2, how do pharmacists read doctors' handwriting? Well, we have this required course in school. Very difficult course. Really. We answer all your questions. The Medicine Shop, what a pharmacy was meant to be.
Most of us this past week heard the President's State of the Union message, the plan he laid out for getting the recovery, the economy underway. We want to get some expert opinion on this as to whether it's actually going to happen and how will we know, what will the signs that we can have that it is getting underway. Well, Jeff Madrick is with us, who covers the economy and financial affairs here in New York, and in Washington is Irving R. Levine, our chief economics correspondent for NBC News. Irving, let's start with you. The President took some hard knocks on the speech, people saying it's not really enough. How do you view it? Is there some merit there?
Well, Garrick, there wasn't a lot the president really could propose because of the huge budget deficit. He couldn't come out with big spending cuts. He couldn't come out with big tax cuts. And so what the president did come out with was a number of little things, but they are important. The cut for industry and the tax investment tax credit, that will help industry. It certainly has in the past. The $5,000 tax credit for new home buyers will give the housing industry, which is already showing improvement, a further boost. The easing of the rules on taxes on early withdrawals from individual retirement accounts, all of that will put more money into people's pockets. Now, one may say, well, these are simply aspirin for an economy that's in big trouble, but let me remind you that aspirin has been described as a wonder drug.
Okay, well, Jeff, is this aspirin, and is that enough for what ails us?
I wish it were aspirin. I don't even think it is aspirin. I guess I disagree. Fundamentally with Irving, I think that conventional wisdom that nothing can be done is dangerous stuff. I think there's historically very little evidence of that kind of thing. Moreover, there's very little evidence we can pull out of this kind of recession, which is a very different kind of recession, the longest recession we've had since the end of World War II.
Not the worst, but the longest.
The longest. In some ways, quite bad. Let's say, I mean, a lot of people were unemployed, a very high proportion of the economy, a lot of jobs lost, and the jobs aren't coming back.
Okay, but people know that. This is familiar territory. Let's look ahead, Jeff. Do you see a recovery coming this year? You see it on the horizon.
The best you will see, I think, is a little flurry of activity that once again looks like a recovery, the incipient recovery, and then it will wither away, much like we had before. And people will again say, we can't do anything. It is not a lot different than the conventional wisdom in the 1930s. Those people were not unintelligent back then.
Now, Irving, let's go to you, because many economists, and I hesitate to use the word mainstream economists, are saying a little bit more patience. By the middle of this year, we may be having 2, 3, even 4% growth. Is that the way you see it, and is there any way that we should or could believe that?
I'm afraid I have to disagree with Jeff Madrick on this. The economy certainly isn't likely to improve in a hurry, but I've heard forecasts on your program that we're going to go into a double-dip recession by now. The fact is that the latest figures show that the economy actually grew a little in the final 3 months of last year. Also, after a terrible year in the key housing industry, which usually leads the way out of recession, home sales were up almost 8% in December, and that's the third straight month of increase.
But come on, Irving. I have to jump in here.
Well, let me just finish. Let me just finish with some of these signs, if I may. One of the first industries to signal a turnaround are the manufacturers of packaging material. That's because when companies start selling more goods, they have to package them. And makers of packaging material are reporting a 10% jump in business. Okay. We see an increase in travel, indicating that business is on the road or in the air again. Also, the makers of microchips, which go into everything from big computers to telephone answering machines, suddenly they can't.
Okay, Irving. Okay, now Irving, these are indicators, and they are important indicators because they can translate eventually, one hopes, into increased consumer confidence, and that is what finally does get us out of this recovery, of this recession. But Jeff, is there any reason to believe the experts? Quite frankly, whether it's you or Irving or any economist.
Right. Certainly Irving has done his homework. There are 1 or 2 crocuses blooming out there. It does not make a field by any means. And indeed, I think that is the question. The conventional wisdom said much the same thing a year ago, 9 months ago. They said we are out of the recovery. We are the recession. We are not. Jobs have not come back. But give me one more second here. We are ignoring the distinction in this recession. People are not only indebted, there are way too many airline companies, computer companies, chemical companies. This is a long process.
Yes, but aren't people bringing down their debt? Many families who are watching this show have or are thinking about refinancing their home mortgages. Right. And isn't that laying a foundation for a better recovery, Irving?
Yes, indeed, that's true. And also, one must look at history, and that is we did have a bad recession in 81 and 82. We had interest rates going up to 21.5% on the prime rate. In this recession, we've had interest rates coming down. The prime rate is now below 8%. We had an unemployment rate that went up to almost 11% in the last recession. Gentlemen, and consequently, we've got more people working in this recession, all of which are indications that, as in the past, particularly with low interest rates, which have always been the spark to bring us out of the recession, it will happen again.
Okay, Irving, Jeff, we've got to cut it right here. This is what happens, I think, anywhere when economists get together these days. They may know it, they may know nothing. Who knows? Thank you, Irving. Thank you, Jeff. This comes under the heading to be continued. Mary Alice.
And Garrick, next up, another controversy, an old controversy that has taken on new life, the fight over separation of church and state. That's because Christian lawyers and lay people are now better organized and well-financed and are going head-to-head in courtrooms with the ACLU, often with success.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.